It's time for the big show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Gallo.
And I'm Country Jim.
And we're going to talk about country cooking.
Yes.
I like to cook.
And I love food.
And matter of fact, the first time I interviewed you on the big show, you talked about your favorite, the one thing that you cook that is your favorite. And that was what?
I don't remember.
You remember? Cornbread?
Oh, cornbread, sure. I was trying to think of a meat.
Out of a pouch, you just add an egg and milk to it. Hey, you're done. You know?
Yeah, I would get a lot of compliments on it, and my wife would say, it's just a mix.
But it's good. But it's good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of country cooking here. And I think we talked about this earlier. You've got a big, long list. I didn't have time to make a list, but I do. I cook all the time, so I've got several different things that I like to cook. One thing, when I moved away from home way back there, when I was about 23, 24 years old, I got to my little abode, and I'm, of course, eating bologna sandwiches and Fritos and drinking iced tea, okay? I did that for, a long time. And then finally one day I thought, I wasn't married. I'm batching it, okay? So I called Mama. I said, hey, how do you make your hot water cornbread? I'd like to make me some hot water cornbread. And because I was going to cook me some beans and, do it right, So I got her recipe for hot water cornbread. And that it's easy. You boil some water, and it's kind of a ratio thing that you got to play with. I think she used to put about a tablespoon of flour to maybe like a cup of cornmeal. And we always use yellow cornmeal. Now, a lot of people like white cornmeal, but I like yellow myself. And we would fry those up at a cast iron skillet with just a little bit of oil in there, not deep frying them, but just enough so we get a good brown on them and just flip them and make them, and you flatten them out with your fork, not with a spatula. Mm-hmm. So you always had those marks.
Yeah,
in the cornbread.
We called that corn pone, I think, back in the country.
You did, yeah. You were from the
hills of Tennessee.
You were over there. Here in Texas, it was just hot water cornbread.
Yeah.
But it was good.
Yes.
And still today, we occasionally will make that. Matter of fact, I done it at Mama's the other day, and they were having some hot water cornbread.
I had a musician friend in Louisville. He played some music with me, bluegrass mainly. In the 70s, he'd played guitar for Bill Monroe and played with a lot of different bands, and he loved to cook. So I was doing a festival down here, so I got him to fly down and play with my band. His name was Danny Jones, passed away a couple of years ago, and he loved to cook. And at the house, he cooked some corn pone for us, hot water cornbread. Mm-hmm. But he told a story about that he was with a on the road band, and they actually flew to Australia to play a festival out there. And because he loved to cook, at the festival site, they let him go in they had a building there where they had a kitchen. Mm-hmm. And so he fixed breakfast for a lot of those Aussies. Is that what you say?
Right.
And he fixed a country breakfast, and he cooked biscuits and put milk gravy. Biscuits and gravy is a very familiar food to country people. Oh, yeah. There are a lot of restaurants that have breakfast food that they have biscuits and gravy. Yeah. But see, that was a foreign deal to Aussies.
Sure.
So he said he heard he gave this one guy a big helping of eggs and the biscuits open and then gravy put on there.
Right. Oh yeah.
And so the guy was walking away, and one of his Australian friends asked him, he said, "Mate, what be that you've got on your plate?" And he said,
"Wait a minute, do that accent one more time. I've got to hear that. That was good."
His friend said, "I'd say, mate, what might be that on your plate?"
Okay.
And his friend said, "I'm not sure. I think it's some kind of hillbilly sauce."
And it is.
Yeah. And I got thinking about that they really don't know the word gravy. Yeah. It's sauces. Yeah. Sauces to them.
Yeah. We make a lot of gravy around here. We made some the other night, actually, and I have a recipe for that I got from my mama. Yeah. It's one of those things, too. When I moved away from home, between the hot water cornbread and good old gravy, cream gravy, okay, not brown gravy, It's cream gravy made with milk.
Right.
And the secret to good gravy is the amount of pepper you put in it. You got to have the right amount of black pepper. And of course, you got to have salt as well.
Yeah,
but to
pepper,
get that taste.
That's exactly
And a
right.
lot of people will put nutmeg in their gravy.
Really?
Yeah, I've never experimented with that yet. I can't remember where I saw that. Probably in some recipe somewhere in a book or something. But I was thinking, Now, I have put a little garlic in mine occasionally. Powdered garlic. I'll maybe put like a little bit in there.
And some places put chopped up sausage.
Oh yeah.
Sausage
That's
gravy.
good. That is good.
Yeah.
Now, you've got I see you have a long list here.
Yeah.
So what besides the gravy? I see. What else you got on there, man?
Well, when we're fixing breakfast, let's talk about breakfast kind of for a while.
Oh, I love breakfast. We have breakfast for supper sometime.
Well,
Huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll go to a restaurant. These restaurants that have 24-hour breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I'm fixing bacon, if I'm doing the cooking and I'm fixing bacon for grandkids or whoever, if I ask a country musician how he wants his bacon, you can cook it to different degrees of doneness.
Oh yeah.
Some people might not recognize it, but if somebody says, and I've got some people that say it this way, they say they want Ernest Tubb bacon. And that's because the story circulated in Nashville that Ernest Tubb liked his bacon cooked just as crisp as you could cook it without making it black
without
and have
burning
a bad, without burning.
Yeah. I like that. I
So-
like mine crisp as well, though. So yeah.
Yes.
I like. Now I know. I'll say, hey, give me some of that ET bacon.
ET bacon.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Good.
But back home in Tennessee, way back in the days before they had refrigeration, where I was born and raised, they didn't even have electricity or running water. So we would cure.
And you walked to school in the snow, I bet, right? With no shoes on. Is that you're going to tell me that?
It was uphill both ways, going and coming. But they would cure. Generally salt cure the bacons and the hams, sometimes smoke them also. But that was the way of preserving it.
Yep.
So you could have that in the summertime, it wouldn't go bad. And now there are you can go to Paris, Tennessee, and there's a big pork what's the word for that process?
Yeah, the curing plant, or whatever you want to call it.
Processing plant.
A processing plant for hams and
Yeah, well,
bacons and.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
They do the salt. They do the salt cure.
Salt cure. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I had some friends down here in Texas. They lived in Fort Worth, and they were very wealthy, successful, high rollers. We used to say. I had a friend that would call them got rocks, whatever. I don't know what that meant. I think that had to do with diamonds or something.
Yeah.
But so they wanted to come to. At that time, we were living in Kentucky, so they were going to come up to visit us, and they said they had always heard of country ham, and so they wanted me to take them someplace where. Now you understand when they would go to a restaurant. I mean, it was the finest. He said to me one time not to go to a restaurant and order a steak. He said, don't order something that you can cook just as well in your own backyard. That was his thing about it. But anyway.
I agree with him on that.
Yeah.
On the steak part, yes.
Yeah. So they came up. Interestingly, when they came, we were shucking 3 bushels of corn and got him and his wife to help us shuck the corn. And it was kind of interesting because one of her fingernails was a gold fingernail. So I don't think she was too wild about shucking corn. But there was a restaurant 30 miles away, and it was called Colonel's Lady, and it was actually owned by Claudia Sanders, the wife of Colonel Sanders. And they took an old Kentucky farmhouse with the columns out front, and they turned it into a restaurant, and it was a limited fare kind of thing. They had country ham, and they had fried chicken. But we ordered country ham dinners. And it was a family style place. They had 7 vegetables they brought out in bowls.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of family style.
Yes.
Yes.
And so that was one time that I got all of the country ham I would want to eat because they took one bite of it and choked on it. And so I got...
They didn't like ham?
They didn't like the salty...
The saltiness of it. Oh, that's the best
really,
part, though.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
So, but you could, when they would have it for breakfast, they would have country ham and red eye gravy.
Oh, yeah.
And red eye gravy was simply water and grease from the ham. But
and a little coffee. They put a little coffee down here. We put a little coffee in.
I'm glad you said that because my mother would put a little bit.
Yeah,
of
just
coffee
a little bit of coffee.
Yeah,
some good old, almost very very strong coffee.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Just and I'm trying to think of the word here, but just a real strong coffee. Yeah.
Well, my people back in the day made what I've heard called cowboy coffee. It was a percolator and just put the grounds in top, and you'd have some grounds in the bottom of your cup. But you're more country than I thought. You know all about adding coffee to the red eye gravy.
Shoot, man, I tell you, I grew up with a pair of shoes on, opposed to you, where you grew up barefoot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but my shoes had holes in them there. So, but anyway.
But I was going to talk a little bit about vegetables.
Go ahead.
Because in the spring, as the weeds and stuff started popping up, there would be a plant out around the barns and that would start to grow. That we would pick the leaves while it was young and tender, but if you just let it grow, it could grow into a bush as tall as you were. And when it got up big like that, it would put out red berries. And as kids, we would take the berries and squeeze them on our face like we were Indians.
All right.
Right. And that was we called it poke bushes.
Poke salad.
Poke salad. But you had to pick those leaves when they were young and tender. And if you didn't know what you were doing, if you just picked them, went in and turned on the hot water and cooked them and ate them, you might only need one more white shirt. Because they were poisonous.
Yep.
And so, so you had to boil them about 3 times, as I remember. And
so, what was the poison in them? I really don't know.
I don't know.
I never heard that story. Now I didn't know they were poison. Okay.
But when I lived in South Carolina, Dolores Johnson, who we went to church with, she was from the mountains of Kentucky. And one time she actually canned poke salad.
Wow.
So she brought me a case of 12-quart jars with poke salad. But when Mama would cook it, we would actually have it Mama would kind of fry it and with scrambled eggs.
Oh, okay.
In the poke salad.
Yeah.
And then another part of that story is when I lived in Florida, North Florida. In North Florida, there's a palmetto palm tree that tends to be a short palm. And they cut that palm down and they trim away the whatever you call those palm leaves. They're called something.
Palms?
Yeah, I guess they are.
They are.
Palm trees have palms on them.
Yeah, palms. Trim away the palms. Yep.
And then there's a soft, spongy center to it.
Really?
And so they cut that up, and it's called swamp cabbage. That's what country people call it. Now, it's considered a delicacy.
Right.
And you could go to a highfalutin supermarket, and you could buy a jar of something that's called heart of palm.
Okay.
And that's the city slickers way of dealing with that. But we would cook it. That's why we call it swamp cabbage. We would cook it up, put some bacon in it maybe. And then my other story from North Florida has to do with another country thing, and that is what's the country greens?
Turnip?
No.
No, collard?
Collard greens.
Collard greens.
Collard greens.
Okay.
we had the church, a little church out in the country there in North Florida. One time had a potluck, and one of the families there, they were ranchers. This was really country doings, and David Gamble and his wife Foy, and so I walked by. Sister, as church people, so we called them Sister back then.
Right.
I walked by Sister Foy's plate, looked at it, and then I looked at her coffee cup, and I said, Sister Foy, that's the worst looking coffee I've ever seen in my life.
Oh.
And she laughed and she said, oh, son, that's not coffee, that's pot liquor. And I said, well, shame on you for drinking that at a church.
Little did you know.
Little did I know that it was the juice from cooking the greens.
Right, yeah. That's good stuff. Now, something you were talking about going back one food group here, the palm.
Yeah.
I heard that the palm, that what do you call it, palmetto palm, is that what it is?
Yeah.
I understand that is a poison as well to dogs and cats, they say.
And it can be to humans.
To humans too.
Yeah,
Okay.
You've got to make sure that you get to the very heart of the palm. You've got to know.
You got to cut away all
what would be
bad stuff.
bitter and poisonous.
I got you.
That's
Okay.
right.
All right.
I was telling somebody one time about my country food background, and about eating poke salad, which was a weed that grew out around the barn. And
there's a song about that, I do believe, that somebody wrote one time.
and swamp cabbage, which was the heart of a tree.
Right.
And my friend said to me, he said, Sloan, we had it really tough when I was a kid, but not so tough that we started eating the weeds in the trees.
All right. Now, I've got another good one for you here.
Great.
Of course, I'm a meat guy. Typically, I used to do a lot of meat and potatoes, meat and rice, that kind of thing. Pork chops. I've got a pork chop recipe that we love it around here, and I don't know a lot of people that cook them like this, but I'll grill my pork chops, and I'll put just salt and pepper and maybe some garlic on them, powdered garlic, whatever. Cook them on my grill, and once I take them off the grill, then I'll make me up some roux. And I make my roux with butter. A lot of people use oil and flour. I use butter and flour. It gives it a different flavor altogether. Matter of fact, it's not so that oily taste. I don't know if you've ever had a roux that it's got an oily taste to it. This gets away. You don't get that oily taste. You just butter. But anyway,
does a roux come from Louisiana?
It does. Well, I think it does. Originally, I think roux was something they used to make before they made their. I you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
all their Cajun cuisines and everything. They'd make that roux to put all their sausage and seafood in and all that kind of stuff.
I had a friend from
gumbo.
over there.
Gumbo. That's
gumbo.
I'm looking for that.
Had a friend over there, and he was quite a chef, and he would cook something called sauce piquant, and that was a roux kind of thing.
Yep. Well, what we do is we make that roux and we season it up with put a lot of onion, bell pepper. And, of course, salt and pepper and just a few other little things in there. We let that get a good nutty flavor out of that roux, because then you know that your flour is cooked and it's done. And then I put the pork chops in there and I let it go for 30 minutes to an hour. And I'm gonna tell you what, buddy, them pork chops, they just fall apart. And then you have all that nice gravy, that roux that you can put on your rice or your mashed potatoes or whatever you want to do what we used to call soppy. Huh?
Yeah.
Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
That's where you have your gravy.
Yeah.
And you take a piece of light bread or loaf bread. It's called a lot of different things. Back when I was growing up, we called it loaf bread, actually. That was one of the terms we used for bread.
We called it light bread, too.
But we called it light bread as well as years went on. And you just take it and rake it across the plate. And if it breaks the bread and the bread falls apart, you got yourself some good gravy there. That's how that works, man.
Now you didn't have to use pork chops though, right?
You could use anything.
Chicken or
oh yeah, you could throw some chicken in there. Actually, we make hamburger steaks sometimes.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to The Big Show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
This has been a Unicap Media presentation.